Hello and welcome to the very first edition of the Inside Track Ireland, brought to you by William Hill, the best value bookmaker. We'll be bringing you top tips on a weekly basis, insider tidbits from the big meets across Britain and Ireland, but with a focus on Ireland. My name is Jane Mangan. I'm very much an Irish colleen from County Cork, and I'm joined by a man who needs no introduction, a guy who's won basically every race that's worth winning. I'll refer to him as my wingman, but he's also known as Barry Geraghty.
Hey Jane, yeah, good to be on board. And wingman, I'll take that. I've definitely been called worse.
Yeah, well look, this is the very first edition of the podcast. I'd imagine we could get down other avenues by the time we're done. It's obviously a treat that we get to work together a lot. We go back a long way. But it's probably this medium a little bit more relaxed. We can go under the layers a little bit more. We go back a long way, Barry. I remember probably 2003 you came to the forefront of my mind because my parents were talking an awful lot about you riding a horse that would eventually win the Grand National for them and for you. As I said, you've won basically all of the big races that are worth winning. Gold Cups, Champion Hurdles, Champion Chases. We did allude to last weekend, we didn't manage to win a Thursday's Chase, but as every other Grade 1 goes, they're in the bag. And it's a real treat to get to work with you on this. But we have form on RTE already.
Yeah, well, likewise, Jane. No, I'm really looking forward to that. And obviously, we've had great times over the years looking back at Monty's Pass. If anyone might have guessed, that was what happened in 2003 when Jimmy Mangan, your dad, trained him to win the Grand National. And fortunately, I got the job to ride him, which was an easy job. But no, that was a magic time and lots of good times since then. But Jane, we've had good times as well working with RTE, and you've definitely grown massively as a presenter after a very successful career as an amateur jockey too. So we'll have to recognise that definitely. But no, really looking forward to getting stuck in, and as you say, getting down and underneath and getting into the conversation if you like. It might be better suited for a high stool rather than a comfortable chair. So we should have fun.
But look, we do know all the right people, Barry. We could broadcast an edition of this podcast from a high stool if you wish. We know people who can make this happen. And as we say, we are obviously focusing on Irish racing, and it's a great time of year. We're kind of at the mid-season point where we're looking ahead to the spring. We're currently getting rained on, absolutely saturated at the moment. But you wouldn't want it any other way.
No, definitely. And some years the water at Leopardstown, because it's been so dry, that's not the case this year with all the rain that's fallen. So, there's bubbles being burst along the way. There's superstars coming to the fore. Reputations being made and reputations being dented. So it's an exciting time of the year, and it's all building up to the big spring festivals.
Yeah. So obviously we'll also have a number of guests as the weeks progress on this podcast to spice things up. But we have much to discuss. As somebody who came in from the saddle, you were obviously revered. You had your own style. You and Nicky Henderson and you, JP McManus, great relationships. What was the most challenging thing you found when you picked up the microphone and dropped the reins? Because everybody finds it different. I'll give you my answer, but what was yours?
Good question. I suppose homework. Homework was funny when I was riding. You're riding against the opposition. You would study form, but you would live a lot of the form. So you can reflect on, previous races where you've clashed with the opposition, be it jockey or be it horse. So a lot of the form you had was instinctive. You brush up on that. What you didn't necessarily know about a horse, you would read up on. But as a working as a pundit, you're having to read up on all the forms. So
was there ever a moment where you got left flat faced, where you were thinking, oh, Ruby's got loads of notes and Jane's saying this? Was there ever a point where you're like, oh damn, didn't have my homework done?
There was actually one at the test a couple of years ago, and I'd my notes written out, but of course I'm scribbled down my notes and I'm flying about at it. And then it got to the test, and we're going through the form for each horse with the, 18 horses in the ring. And I get to my horse and I hit a pause and I kind of stumbled my way through it. And as we went off for an ad break afterwards, Ruby says, you couldn't read your own writing. I said, no, I couldn't. He said, happened to him before. So I printed it for the next time. But I'm back to scribbling it again. I'm managing to read my scribbles, we just said.
I remember I work off an iPad now, as you know, which is absolutely useless in the rain, by the way, if anybody's worried about that. And at Royal Ascot this year, it overheated and I had to put it in a fridge. But I still work off it. But one of my first meetings, I think it was Fairy House, and it was Ted Walsh and Robert Hall and myself, the little trio. And we had one umbrella, and the rain was severe. I think it was Hatton's Grace Drinmore Day. And there was no escaping the rain and my notes, and I couldn't use the iPad, and the ink was running, and it was just like such a mess. And I looked at Robert Hall, and he had each race in a little, when you're in school and you had a folder, a little Polly Pocket, and it was dry, and I was like, and he just said, experience, you can't beat experience. So put it this way, I came on for the run. Okay, Barry, that's enough of the chit-chat. Let's get down to proper business, and most pertinently, the Dublin Racing Festival business. And for that, we're going to enlist the assistance of Andy Holding, our top analyst and speed figure guy for William Hill. Andy and Barry, let's kick off with Dublin. Since 2021, we've had, so that's a 5-year sample of 15 races a year, so 75 races. 42 Cheltenham Festival winners have come out of those 75 races. So that's 56%. Last year, 7 Cheltenham Festival winners came out of the 15 races, but only 2 of them managed to win in Dublin. Kopek de Board and Bambino Fever. Lossiemouth fell, Marie National got beaten, Factor Foyle got beaten, Yasmin DeVoe got beaten, and another way of thinking ran well enough to be supplemented for the Cheltenham Gold Cup. So the narrative here is, even if you get beaten this weekend, don't be too despondent, because you actually still have a chance in March. We move forward to the Irish Arkle. Here at William Hill, you can get yourself a free racing bet simply by placing a bet on any racing action on Friday or Saturday. It's literally that simple. You just opt in on the website or on the app, and away you go. So, is it that simple that we're just going to go all in on Romeo Coolio, Barry?
No, definitely not. It was a workmanlike performance at Christmas, on probably slightly better ground. The ground has dried to yielding to soft in Leopardstown, but there's a couple of rain forecasts, so it's going to get slower again. I think that obviously plays to Romeo Coolio's strengths, but I won't say it was, it was a labour performance, really. He didn't jump as quick and slick as you would have expected him to. His 2 previous chase starts had been over 2.5 miles. Now, one of those was a Grade 1 success in Fairyhouse, but to me, he lacked the urgency you'd like to see in a horse who's going to be a smart 2-man novice chaser. I wouldn't say the same about Cargies. I know it was only a beginner's chase she won, but it's how she attacked the fence, how she jumped. I think Paul Townend could potentially control the race a little bit. As I say, the softer ground is going to make it a test for Romeo Coolio, which is going to suit him, obviously. But I think Paul Townend can control it and can quicken from the front. I think Cargies is a stronger opponent here than Irish Panther would have been at Christmas. Albeit the better ground would have been a help for him there. So I'd be keen enough to take on Romeo Coolio. It's obvious that he's better over further. And I think he could be vulnerable to Cargies over this trip. And she's going to love the ground too. So no, I'm happy to have a go at him here.
That's interesting, and I want to go one layer deeper with you there, because you in particular, Barry, had such a record with 2-mile chasers, and we all memories of Moscow Flyer, but you rode much more than just him. If you're Paul Townend and you say he's going to control the race, what does he do?
He's just going to dictate the pace. Only go as quick as she has to. Now, she is a keen going filly, but she was relaxed in the early parts of the race in Leopardstown last day. She rolled on a little bit down the back straight, but as much as Paul can slow it from the front and then quickening from 3 out or even later again. So to me, if I was to ride the race, I'd only go as quick as Romeo Coolio was forcing her to go. And I don't think he necessarily has the natural speed and jumping speed. Now, he will be sharper for that run at Christmas over 2 miles. I think he'll jump quicker and slicker as a result, but he's nowhere near as slick as she was with her performance at Christmas. So I think if Paul can just slow it down, dictate the pace, and quicken from the front, I think he could have the edge.
That's an interesting perspective, Andy, because We know Romeo Coolio is ideally probably going to want further. He had the choice: meet final demand over 2 mile 5, or stay at this distance as he did at Christmas and potentially take on Quebec de Board. He didn't know that the horse wasn't going to be declared, and here we are. But surely a dual Grade 1 winner who looks like he's relaxed in disposition can just push the mare along. Am I wrong to think that?
No, no, no. I think it's a fascinating race. I think you both made really good cases for how this race is going to pan out. My opening gambit for this race had been Sport, because my theory was with Romeo Coolio against Quebec de Board is that because there isn't at this moment in time technically a race that connections of Romeo Coolio are happy with at the Cheltenham Festival. You know, they said, "Oh, we're not going to go down the Arkle route," and obviously there's no 2.5 mile novice race for him, and they didn't really want to run him in the Arkle. That really this is his big race of the season. So you would have thought Romeo Cooley would have been a little bit more primed to win this Grade 1. Let's think about Cheltenham afterwards, and connections with Quebec de Board would have done coming back off a slight setback. That was my way of thinking. So I thought, well, I'm going to go with Romeo Cooley out of those two. But now we've obviously got a spanner in the works when we've just got 3 runners. As Barry said, this is going to be tactical. And Cargisi is deadly from the front, as we saw last time out. Yeah, I know she got a solo, but she's going to get a solo here, one would have thought. I'd imagine Jack Kennedy will just be happy to draft in behind Cargisi here. There's no real need to do anything too silly early on. Cargisi ran a really big time figure when she won here over the Christmas period. It was on the day that we had a real good barometer to how quick she was running, because she ran on the same card that Solness beat Marine Nationale and Marsborough in 2 respective Grade 1s back to back. And the time figure was exactly the same. They both ran 4 minutes 11 for the 2 mile circuit. But actually, if you break it down, once they went away from the stands, they jumped the first on the far side. Cargisi was actually 10 lengths quicker than the older horses, or the more established horses. And considering she was pulled up as well on the running as well, and she was eased down, I thought it was a really, really, really tremendous effort. I actually thought she was going to be the value pick of me when I was looking at this race. I thought, well, she's going to be like 4-1. She's going to be probably a little bit under the radar, but as it's turned out, she's only going to be around about a 7-4 poke. But I agree with Barry. I think she could be very, very dangerous here off the front. And albeit I do like Romeo Coolio, I just couldn't really be backing him at sort of 8 to 15, 4 to 7 when she's lurking in this race. So yeah, I'm going to go with the mare as well.
Yeah, that's fascinating. I didn't expect both of you guys to be with the mare, so I did a little reference check. And while I accept Romeo Coolio's hurdle campaign was always been a stepping stone to his chasing campaign, she was actually rated 2 pounds superior to him over hurdles. So that makes it a little bit more interesting than I initially thought. Both of you guys with the mare. Before we get on to a fascinating renewal of the Irish Gold Cup, 13 runners, Galopin Des Champs going for a 4th win, which would equal the record set by Florida Pearl in the late 90s, early 90s. But of course, Florida Pearl didn't do it in consecutive years. He came back for his 4th Grade 1 after a 2 years recess. This guy would be making his own little piece of history if he were to do 4 in a row, but he's going to have to be very good to do it. 8 from Willie Mullins, Jack Kennedy and Ian Maximus, Mark Walsh picking Factor Philo over I Know the Way You're Thinking, no Oti Calor, so much to digest. And before we do that, have to remind our viewers that you can keep an eye out for our Racing Epic Boost, which goes live at 9 a.m. on Saturday morning in celebration of Gold Weekend. Reminder that last week's offer was actually a winner when Jaguar finished in the first 2. How he didn't win, I just don't know. We get stuck into the big one, Barry. You won it. It's a fabulous race. And this year's race, as good a pointer to the big race in March as any.
Absolutely. And he ran a great race in Leopardstown at Christmas. Got a little outpaced, maybe from 4 out. Then obviously got involved around the turn in and just got tired in the last 100 yards. So it was a good run, and you'd expect him to improve. Now, he did look fit in the ring, but he will improve for that run, there's no doubt. Aphrodite Fury was a great performance by him. I think he gave away a good bit of ground jumping to his right, but that's still going to be an issue again here on Saturday. But you'd expect Galopin Des Champs should improve enough to reverse the form of Aphrodite Fury. Ian Maximus is interesting at his price, because he was badly hampered by Aphrodite Fury at the last. So And Derek O'Connor probably got involved a little bit earlier on the second last. He could have delayed it a little bit longer and maybe gone for more of an inside line. There is layers to this race. Gaelic Warrior, obviously a high-class horse. For me, didn't turn up at Kempton, but like that as well, I think he's better going right-handed, albeit he's won an Arkle. At Cheltenham, I still think he's at his best going right-handed. The one I like is Factifile. Obviously, really good performance behind Gaelic Warrior in the John Durkin first run of the season, came to beat Gaelic Warrior and just failed to go through them. But for me, it was fitness was his issue. And I wouldn't say he was grossly unfit, but he just needed the run to put him right, I'd have felt. He didn't run no race at all down at Christmas in the King George. But that's the only time he's lined up on good ground. All of his form prior to that is on yielding or soft ground. So I think slower ground is going to be a big key to him. Galloping the Champ is the worthy favourite. Obviously, he's the champion. He's the one they have to beat. But for me, the value is Factifile, and maybe a little bit on another way you're thinking. But Factifile is the one I'd want to be on.
I love that you're not the three selections so far from Barry are not what I was thinking at all. Okay, so the Ryanair entry, not even a Gold Cup entry in the Irish Gold Cup. Tell me, how hard or easy would it have been for Mark Walsh to get off? I know the way you're thinking.
Well, how he didn't perform at Christmas. He was expected to improve a lot for the John Durkin. They were really happy with the run there. And then he ran so flat at Christmas. It'd be very hard to get off Factifile to ride him. Factifile disappointed in Kenton. As I said, I put it down to the ground. He was only beaten 9 lengths, I think it was, all the same. So he didn't run desperately. But Factifile is a horse I loved last season. He obviously won the Ryanair really impressively. But I felt this season, I know we did a piece with Nick Luck in Cheltenham early in the season. He said, pick your Gold Cup horse. And I went with Factifile because I think with an extra year under his belt, his racing style is going to suit stepping up and trip better. I know he isn't in the Gold Cup, but there's always an option to supplement him if it did come round.
As they did last year with another way you're thinking. Andy, it's all happening. How do you read this race? Because there's probably 8 horses in here that if they won the race, I wouldn't be all that surprised.
No, I agree with that. Yeah, it's a difficult one to know what's at the back of a lot of connections of minds here. What have they got further down the field? Is this race on Saturday the be all and end all? To some it will be. Obviously for Galopin Des Champs, definitely. I think he's a sort of 5 to 4, 6 to 4 chance to win this, and yeah, he's 6 to 1 to win the Gold Cup. So that tells you that this is his big opportunity. The track he absolutely adores. He's had a run under his belt now, and he is going to be all guns blazing for this. But not necessarily all horses in this race, I think, are going to be of that way inclined. I think there's several going to be still having a little bit of a look to see where they're at for the rest of the season. Some of them might be sort of Grand National horses. Some of them are going to be dropping back in trip for Ryanair's like Factifile or even possibly Gaelic Warrior. So I don't think we're going to get the true showing of every single horse in the race. We don't really know where we're at with Are You Way of Thinking. Obviously, he burst back to form in this race last year, but he showed absolutely nothing so far since. So there's lots of ifs and buts here. I think it'll be interesting to see where Paul Town then lines up here, because at the last meeting he went sort of like down the centre of the track, and that's not normally like him. When he's really aggressive on Galopin Des Champs, when he's won here and he's been at his best, he's gone down the hair rail and he's really bossed and bullied the field. I think if he makes the run in, and that's the signal of intent from the start, he's going to be very difficult to shake off, because every time that he's led and he's got a head up of steam here at Leopardstown, he's really got the bit between the teeth and he just doesn't want to get beat. But I think he was quite happy the other day to let Affordale Fury sort of take a lead, and Affordale Fury got on the outside of him, and even when they turned into the home straight, that was the best part of the track, and Paul Town inexplicably went down the middle, which I didn't think really did him any favours on the running. So I think if Paul Townham does line up this time down the outside and he's aggressive at the first, I think he's going to be very difficult to beat Galopin Des Champs. I think the die will be cast very early. I think you could juggle the balls up with all the others, and we can mention the others on their best form and where they're at the moment. I think the one that we don't know enough about, and the one that is completely looking from left field, is Spindlebury. Yeah. I'm not sure who'll ride, but I'd love to see Danny Mullins
ride. Danny Mullins has been capable of pulling aces and jokers from all of the packs.
Absolutely. Yeah, I've gone on record a few times doing podcasts in the UK and when I've done a few with your good self talking about Irish racing. I think Danny Mullins is absolutely mustard, particularly when he rides the second or sometimes third string of Willies. I think he sometimes he takes offence to be unconsidered or the second and third string, and he really sort of comes out of his shell. The number of times he's won with sort of 25 to 1 shots, 20 to 1 shots, thinking outside the box, doing something differently, going wide on horses when all the others are going around the inside. I think he's a real thinking man's jockey. And he's ridden Spindlebury before, and she's very much on the upgrade. She loved the ground. She's unproven over the trip, but she could improve for the trip. She was good when she won the Grade 1 in Fairyhouse last year. Okay, she only beat Firefox and Champ Carly, but they're two good horses. Um, and she's just been in splendid form. She knows how to win. She's just a professional winner. And when these horses win and get on a roll, they just, they find it hard to come out of that sort of cycle. So I think if there's one horse in the race that we don't know enough about that could be anything, um, I think it's still her, and I'd be prepared to sort of roll the dice and have a bit of a poke at her at a big price or biggish price, rather than chance that Factor File stays the trip, chance that Gallic Warrior comes back to something like his best at a track at the moment he doesn't really like, chance Affordale Fury on the softer ground, and will he get a smoother passage as he did last time out? I think, like I said, there's lots of some books about quite a few of these, but with her we just don't know. So yeah, I think she's around about 8 to 1 Spindlebury. I'll have a poke with her.
I agree. She's 5 from 5 over fences. No mare has ever won the Irish Gold Cup, but I don't think many will have tried down through the years. Gallopin Des Champs chasing his 13th Grade 1. I think how the shape of this race is going to be vital. If Paul Townend gets an uncontested lead, and Barry, as you mentioned before, controlling a race, I think I Am Maximus is going to be ridden closer to the pace. I often think that he's ridden just to think we're going back to Aintree, whereas realistically, after what happened at Christmas and Jack Kennedy now on board, I think this guy's definitely going to be a little bit more forward and ridden as a player. Affordale Fury, we've mentioned, he can go forward. Also, just note that Gordon Elliott has 2 in here. They're massive 50 to 1, 66 to 1 shots, but that Jack Kennedy's been able to get off them to ride a more fancied horse. And Gaelic Warrior, what does Patrick Mullins do on him, Barry? What would you do? He's a horse that likes to be forward, but I don't know if he'd stay on this ground if he does do that.
Yeah, that is the question. And as I mentioned earlier, he has a preference to go right-handed. He does jump to his right. So to get him to relax and he's pulling and leaning to go to his right, it makes it harder for Patrick. So I think he's going to be a difficult ride over this trip in this company on this ground. He won't be conserving much. So I'm against Gaelic Warrior. I think he's a brilliant horse. I did really fancy him going for King George, but I'd say like that the ground was too quick from there as well. So I wouldn't give up hope on him completely, but I think he's going to struggle on Saturday.
Okay, well it's very simple. I want a selection and I want an each way shot, and I think I know who Andy's each way shot is. So you can go first.
Yeah, it's definitely Spindlebury. So she's the real big unknown factor in this race. Sometimes those are the kind of ones we might as well have just a dart at the kind of prices they are. So yeah, under these conditions, I think she's got a better chance than current 8 to 1 suggests.
Okay, and Barry?
Well, at 7 to 1 or so, in fact, the file is each way. That'll do me then.
Yeah, a winner's a winner's a winner. I think you'll be with me the weekend, Barry, on RT, and if Gallopin Des Champs manages to win 4 in a row, that would be one of those, I'd say, magic results. So my heart hopes that he wins, and my head tells me he can as well, given conditions on how he ran on his first run at Christmas. And my each way shot is I Am Maximus, because I just think he's going to be ridden differently. Jack Kennedy, first time on him, just stranger things have happened. We will look at the Dublin Chase first. Now, note, at time of recording, we don't have final declarations. Top of the market currently, Majborough, Marine National, Solness, and Ergumen. Barry, where do you want to start?
Well, I suppose you have to recognise the performance Marine National put in the last day. when second to Solness. You know, he gave away so much ground with that mistake, going away from the stands to get back into a challenging position was a brilliant run. But it's different conditions, I think, on Sunday. Slower ground. We did win the Supreme on soft ground a few years back now, but to me, you can handle soft ground over hurdles. Some horses can handle soft ground over hurdles, but then struggle with it over fences because there's more effort involved in jumping. And to me, he is a horse who would rather better ground. I know it's been referenced that Barry Connolly's he's waiting to decide whether he will run if it is too soft. But Majborough, on the other hand, for me, would thrive in those conditions. He didn't find the rhythm you'd like at Leopardstown at Christmas on that better ground. I think he can find it on softer ground. As I say, he's going to relish those conditions. So Majborough would be the one for me. There's a little bit of forgiveness needed. And he needs to put in a better round of jumping than he put in at Cork. But I think going left-handed in Leopardstown is a help to him there as well. So slower ground, going left-handed, I'm with Majborough.
Majborough for Barry. Andy is, and I'm guilty of this along with a lot of other people, Solness, loves track and trip, will, I think, have no issue with the ground. Is he just one of those horses that we're never going to give the credit to?
Absolutely, yeah. I think he's there to pick up the scratch if the other two don't turn up on their A game. As we've seen before, it's dangerous to dismiss him. We have done in the past, and he keeps going off ridiculous prices. He's not quite so big this Sunday. But he's a no-nonsense ride for his jockey. He'll go out in front. He just does his own thing. He pops along, sweet as a nut. His jumping index is always very good. He saves ground over his fences. Unlike Majborough, who can rub the odd one or two. That's been his downfall recently. He's poor at Cork. He was slightly better at Leopardstown, admittedly, the last day, but his finishing effort was still a little bit tame. I thought, considering that race was on a plate for him, really. You know, Marine Nationale, his main market rival, and blundered his chance away early on, and yet somehow managed to still beat him, having been on the canvas almost. He's just not a kind of horse I want to be backing in a short price margin. He's very talented, but from a punting perspective, he's just too risky at sort of 6-4. But the ground is the key to the Marine Nationale. I think I'd probably just hold fire. If it was not too bad, we get a chance to look at it on Saturday. You don't have to bet at the moment. And if it's still okay, come Sunday and they haven't had that much rain, I'd sooner rather go with Marine Nationale just because I think he's a lot more reliable. I think he's the best horse in the race, full stop. The only reason he wouldn't win this would be genuine soft ground, as Barry said. But he is very, very talented because only the real good ones like him could put in a performance like that, having almost been on the floor and managed to make that amount of ground. I mean, you wouldn't have argued if his pilot would have pulled him up. You would have said fair enough, or we'll regroup and go again another day. But the fact he got within half a length of Solness was almost a miracle. Just shows you how good he is. So he's very much the daddy in this division. Providing the conditions aren't too bad, as I said on Sunday. I think he'll win this, and it's definitely not a Mickey Mouse race.
No, it's not. It's a proper race, and hopefully he does line up. I hope he's declared at least, and then let Leopardstown do its thing. Currently, at the time of recording, yielding to soft, which is quite remarkable considering it was underwater 24 hours ago. We move forward to the Irish Champion Hurdle. This is an each-way extra race with William Hill, so you can take more places on the race that you fancy. And I think we're going to get a decent-sized field for the Irish Champion Hurdle, so the choice is yours as a punter as to how many places you want to take on your each-way fancy here. And that might well be El Fabiolo. We'll take it as we stand. Currently, Lossiemouth is your favourite ahead of Brighter Days Ahead. The race is being built as the rematch. But then you throw in Anzadam, who threw his chance away at Christmas by pulling too hard. El Fabiolo's in there, and Poneros will be back. Barry, this is more than a two-horse race.
Absolutely, it's a quality field. Lossiemouth, Brighter Days Ahead. You know, Gordon he's made no secret that he expects Brighter Days Ahead to improve a lot for her run at Christmas. For me, though, the run at Christmas was on the track that she won last season and put in that massive performance, winning by 30 lengths. And you could argue like that was her, that was her crowning moment, if you like. And how strong a form was that really when the opposition maybe just didn't turn up. She beat Winter Fog. She struggled on the back of that. To me, she's never really lived up to expectations through her novice season. So I'm yet to be fully convinced she is all she's meant to be. Where on the other hand, Lossiemouth, you could set your clock by her. Brilliant form, good winner last time. She's she's so reliable. You're going to be in a wider line as well this track on Sunday, so ground is soft and heavy and there's rain forecast, so it's going to be desperate conditions, proper staying ground. Now that is said to be brighter days ahead to love those conditions on 2 mile, but to me it's going to make it the test of stamina that Lossiemouth wants. So I think Lossiemouth will be hard to beat. But one for a little bit of forgiveness again would be possibly Ballyburn. Ran a brilliant race behind Tiupu in the Hatton's Grace in his first run of the season. He would have needed the run that day. Didn't show up at all, went third to Tiupu at Leopardstown at Christmas. But if you go back to his form, to the performance he put in here 2 seasons ago as a novice hurdler when he destroyed a quality field, if you forgive that run at Christmas, you obviously have to draw a line to his novice chase career this last season where he actually had some reasonable form. But he is a proper player in a stay and race, if you like, here. So he could be one who could get involved at a fancy price. Like, I think Lossiemouth would be the one to beat, but I think Ballyburn, if he was to reproduce what he did in the Hatton's Grace and allow improvement for fitness, he could be a player at a big price.
Out of interest, how would you ride Amsterdam?
Well, he carted with Patrick Mullins half down the back, so I think Amsterdam will make up his own mind. It'll be interesting to see who rides him, whether it be Danny or Patrick or who. But Amsterdam might just decide for himself what he wants to do. If he can be controlled, will improve his chances. But to me, I think he'd have to step up in his best form, regardless, to trouble the top 2.
Fair point. I think he's one of those horses that even if you go in front, he's just going to tear off. He doesn't listen. Lossiemouth has had 16 runs, Andy. She's never been out of the first 2 bar that time she fell. She's a remarkably consistent mare. Then you have this, just this semblance of brilliance off brighter days ahead, and you just know that there's an absolute epic, day in her. I know she had a brilliant day last year, but you could see her turning the form around from what she did at Christmas. Am I mad to think that El Fabiolo could play a hand here? I understand the race that he won at Punchestown. Splan's Tower was using it as a stepping stone to chasing. Glen Killen has won subsequent, but he was in a different league. I've called him a lot of names over fences, but over hurdles, could he make an impact here?
Absolutely, Jane. Yeah, I think he's a definitely more than a bit part player here. He definitely falls into the dangerous floater category. Arguably, he might be the pace of the race here. So if you're an Amsterdam supporter, for instance, who wants a good gallop to stop him from pulling, you'll want to see Al Fabiola going off in front. I'd imagine he made the running. Tactically, I can't see any of the others wanting to try and bustle him up. He made all the running last time out when he won at Punchestown. He was very good that day. Didn't really have to be anything like his best to beat an out of form Ballyadam, who didn't really turn up for once. And as you mentioned, the two or three behind were having runs for another day. The time wasn't anything overly special, but it did show at least glimpses that the fire still burns with Al Fabiola, and he's very dangerous, particularly on this ground. It's going to take some getting it here. So yeah, he's definitely. I think 10 to 1's a big price. So I agree with this price. It's definitely bigger than I want to be laying him at. My theories with brighter days ahead. I actually think that the Elliott team probably did the right thing in winning the Neville's Hotel last year when King of Kingsfield went off in front, and they used him as a real pacemaker. And the time figure was absolutely sensational. No other horse ran quicker over hurdles than Brighter Days Ahead did when she won that race. We got a number far outweighing anything else any other horse did, including Stateman and Lossiemouth. So we know that she's capable of that. But I actually think that race bottomed her, and it left more of a mark on her than it would have seen perhaps with her homework and what have you. She just didn't turn up at all. She was absolutely punch drunk in the champion hurdle. I know people say, "Oh, it was Cheltenham," and she might not like Cheltenham, but she ran well enough in the mares race the year before. I mean, she had the race on a plate, really, didn't she? Given what had happened, and come down to the last, she was absolutely walking. She's ran okay subsequently, but I thought she had every chance to go by Lossiemouth the other day. And if you watch the last 50 yards, Lossiemouth, who I thought was idling in front, was going away again. I don't really see how Brighter Days Ahead can win this, because they haven't got the team tactics that they had with when King of Kingsfield went off in front and Brighter Days Ahead was 20 lengths ahead of Stateman. That was just an odd set of circumstances. I don't think that those circumstances ever arise again, particularly in this race. And I think Team Mullins are not going to let that kind of thing happen again. So I think I have Fabiola go off in front. and Paul Townend will just be tracking him in behind. And you'd like to think that Lossiemouth, if she's going to be a champion hurdle horse, and surely they'll go to the champion if she does win this. If she's going to be um, a major contender for the champion, she's got to win this, and I think she will.
I can already see it, Barry. We're on television. Willie Mullins wins the Irish Gold Cup with Spindleberry. She goes to the Mayor's Chase. The next day, he wins the Irish Champion Hurdle with Lossiemouth. She goes to the Mayor's Hurdle. Let's have all that debate over the weekend. Can't wait. Can't wait. Before we get stuck into the naps, this is a reminder that you can opt in for best odds guaranteed each and every day at williamhill.com and on the app. And especially this weekend, don't miss out on the best odds guaranteed on each and every race at the Dublin Racing Festival, as well as across all Irish and UK racing. But now into more professional and commercial stuff. So for that, we need the head honcho. He's known by his mates as DK, but he was not christened that by his mother. Dave Kellner from William Hill, you're going to give us some of our best bets for the Dublin Racing Festival. You're going to give us value on our naps. Barry Geraghty has some very interesting selections, and I have a few of my own. So I want you to give us what the professionals are telling us.
Yeah, it's really, really interesting weekend. It's good to be here as well on this new William Hill Inside Track Island. Reminder, we've got epic booths available on Saturday and Sunday, and if you have a bet on racing this weekend, you'll get a free one on us at William Hill as well. I think it's intriguing because you've got some short-priced favourites that the William Hill traders want to take on. I was speaking to them this morning, and they're really keen to get Lossiemouth and or Galopin Des Champs beaten. And it's intriguing because that battle between Lossiemouth and Brighter Days Ahead at the top of the betting for the Irish Champion Hurdle, we're not sure which one's going to go favourite right now, which astonishes me because you look at Lossiemouth's form and she's got it in the book. She's currently just shading favouritism at 11-8 with Brighter Days Ahead just in behind at 6-4. Galopin Des Champs is the worst result at the DRF for William Hill right now. He's at the top of the betting at 13-8, maybe getting a little bit long in the tooth now, Galopin Des Champs, but it was a decent run when third behind Affordale Fury. Galopin Des Champs won the bookmaker. William Hill wants to take on Lossiemouth, not that popular either, and Brighter Days Ahead and Ballyburn at a bigger price are the two the traders want to keep on side. And just a quick mention for one other as well, and that's King Rasco Grey in the novice hurdle. Very popular 11-4, and is probably the third worst result in the book at the DRF, behind those two I just mentioned, Galopin Des Champs and Lossiemouth. But William Hill, keen to take that pair on.
I'm so glad that a bookmaker is actually being brave. Like, taking on Lossiemouth, Barry, you've already outlined her credentials. And Galopin Des Champs on soft ground at Leopardstown, DK, come on, he's surely the right favourite.
Yeah, I think he's the right favourite, but it's just whether or not he's as good as he once was, Galopin Des Champs. I personally love Gallic Warrior. I think that the way he was ridden in the King George, he stayed on really well close to the finish there. I think he'll be slightly more handy on that this occasion. Maybe that battle with Factor File pre-Christmas just found out Gallic Warrior in the King George, and he'll have been freshened up, won't he, about a month off the course. He'd be my pick personally, but I can see where you're coming with. If we get the Galopin Des Champs of a couple of years ago, he'll win this race hands down, won't he? But do you want to take 13-8 on Galopin Des Champs now he's that year older? I suppose that's the question that the punters have got to answer. And as far as the trading room are concerned, just willing to take on Galopin Des Champs.
I'm just relishing this open goal, Dave, because this is the first edition of the Inside Track Ireland, so I have to pull you up on calling Gaelic Warrior Gaelic. Barry, that's just not tolerant. We can't tolerate that.
No, but Jane, you've already pulled Dave on, so I'm not going to jump on board. But Gaelic Warrior is a good horse, but I do think he's better right-handed. I think the ground was too quick for him. Kempton. I think there's a lot against him for me going left-handed against the qualities against on the ground he's on, which is going to be an ultra test of stamina. He's a horse with a lot of pace. It's the other horse from the King George I like, and the one I'd like to take on Galopin Des Champs, but is Factor File. I don't think we've got to see him at his best. He was brilliant in the Ryanair last season. He had a great run when just beaten by Gaelic Warrior in the John Durkin, but I think the ground was too quick for McKempton. And I've been keen to see him in these conditions at this age now, taking on Gallop in the Show. I think he's the one who's going to give the favourite most to do.
Can you give us a price, actually, Dave, on Factifile for Barry and I Am Maximus for me to take on the top?
Okay, Factifile is available at 6-1. I Am Maximus currently 14-1 against Galopin des Champs, who heads the betting at 13-8, and Gaelic Warrior is in there at 13-2.
We're learning every day of the week. And out of interest, give me a price on Final Demand. Barry was very sweet, I think, for the Sunday.
Yeah, Final Demand on obviously a really, really short price on the Sunday, as you would anticipate, is currently available at 4-9. It is clear favourites in that race, and it's almost impossible to see Final Demand being beaten. I mean, we've not got the final decks just yet, but 4-9 Final Demand, he's going to be in all those accumulators, all those roll-ups on the Sunday. Final Demand at 4-9.
But at the end of the day, he's a novice, and novices can fall. Things can happen. That's it for today. Barry and I have to go off and study the form. We've got to watch a few replays. There's a huge weekend ahead, and Barry, I don't know how you prep, but it takes me a few hours.
It'll take me a few days, Jen.
Hopefully by then we won't have changed our selections. We usually quite decisive, Barry.
Yeah, maybe so, but you tend to change your mind, Jen, when you get into trading, I think.
Look, things happen. It's live sport. Things happen. I hope you've enjoyed watching and listening to our very first edition of Inside Track Ireland. If you would like to subscribe to the podcast, we'd really appreciate it, or maybe even just leave us a review. Obviously, if it's 5 stars, that would be much appreciated. And if you can spell Barry Geraghty's name correctly, that would also be like thumbs up on that. I'm sure people get that wrong a lot, Barry.
Not that often, actually, surprisingly, Jen. No, so you're probably in a small group there when you struggle with the BA or RY, but there you go.
Tis the G part that gets me, but all right. We'll leave it there. Make sure you've subscribed to William Hill Ireland, to the YouTube channel, that you're following us on all of the socials across Instagram, X, Facebook and more. And make sure you've downloaded the William Hill app to keep up to date with all of the updates and price boosts and bonuses and all of the above. Please gamble responsibly, 18+, and I hope you've enjoyed this, that you'll join us again.